So we are in Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 through 18. We're going to finish up the whole armor of Elohim, the whole armor of Yahweh. We're going to read through all of these verses, but we're really going to be talking about just verse 18. But we'll be talking about the other ones too, because I want to, basically we've talked about each individual piece of armor, and we've done this over the course of several weeks, and I don't want to just end it where we ended it last week. I want to kind of wrap everything up and put it all together so it makes sense. So we're going to talk about the individual pieces of armor briefly, and then we're going to wrap it all up in verse 18, which really I think does put a bow on it, if you will, and makes it all make sense. So once you find Ephesians 6, chapter 6, verse 10, please stand with me as we read the word together, the scriptures together. I'm going to put on my glasses because I'm looking at my page and it's just looks like ants crawling around. There we go. Now I can see it. The armor of Yahweh. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the master and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of Elohim, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of Elohim, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the good news of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked, and take the helmet of salvation, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of Elohim, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, and watching thereunto with all perseverance and supplication for all saints. Let's pray. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you, and as we wrap up the series on the whole armor of Elohim and how we should take it upon us and use it in order to overcome the darkness in this world and overcome the sin in our own lives, I pray that you would help us to understand how important it is for us to prepare and to be equipped as believers going out into a lost world. I pray that you would open my mouth and fill it with the words that you would have me to say, and open our ears and our hearts so that we can receive the truth and understand what it is that you would have us to know. All this I ask in the name of Yahushua Messiah. Amen. And you may be seated. So, when we lived in Cottonwood Falls, we hosted concealed carry classes for people who were interested in getting the conceal and carry permit and carrying a firearm. And one of the things that they talked about in these classes was firearm discipline. And it was talking about how that having a concealed carry permit and having a firearm is it serves a purpose. The purpose, of course, is to act as protection for oneself or protection for others. But a few things that they talked about was that after you got your permit, if you didn't have a firearm, you needed to get one. Because having the permit all by itself doesn't do you any good. You can't, if somebody comes up and they're robbing a store and you stand out to hold up your permit, you're just going to get shot. You're going to look foolish. And so you need to buy a firearm and buy the appropriate ammo for the firearm, which includes the ammo, and if your firearm takes magazines, like a lot do, then you had to buy the magazines that are good for your firearm. An interesting story is, I learned at that point that if somebody had a magazine for one type of firearm that used the same kind of ammo as mine, that didn't necessarily mean that magazine would fit in mine. There's different magazines and different ammo, and you have to buy the right magazines and the right ammo for the firearm that you have, which, trust me, this is all going to make sense because we're talking about armament and the equipment and the armor of Yahweh. So I'm kind of trying to put this into a illustration so you understand what's going on. So having the permit wasn't good enough to protect anybody. Having the firearm itself wasn't good enough to protect you. 9 times out of 10, if you pulled out a firearm and you didn't have any ammo for it, you're just going to end up getting shot. Even if you're the quicker of the two draws, it's not going to work very well for you. And having the proper ammo and the proper magazines is okay, but it's not going to help you if your firearm's not actually loaded. So you have to carry the firearm, you have to carry it with ammo in it, because a firearm without ammo is just about as useless as a tool as you can get. It'd be like if you went out and you said, I'm going to put a house together, and I can do that because I have a hammer. But if you don't have wood and nails and all the other things that you're going to need to build a house, the hammer isn't going to do you any good. You have to be fully equipped in order for that concealed carry permit to do you any good at all, if it would do you good at all. And then after you get fully equipped, you still had to go through the concealed carry class, which provided training on and understanding of what the law was, and in what situations that it was that would be deemed legally acceptable for you to defend yourself with the firearm, and the proper way to carry the firearm. So training and equipment and proper understanding. And before you could leave the concealed carry class, you actually had to demonstrate that to some degree you were proficient with the firearm that you had chose to use. And so the concealed carry class wasn't just educational, there was on-the-site training as well. And then when it was all said and done, you could get your permit and you could move forward. Well, as believers, we've been told that we have armor, right? The whole armor of Elohim. Paul says to put on the whole armor of Elohim. Now, I'm a believer, and I'm a believer today because of my faith in the Messiah, whether or not I decide to put on the breastplate of righteousness. I'm a believer today, whether or not I decide to put on the whole armor. The thing is all of the armor was made available to me. Every piece of armor that we've mentioned thus far has been made available to us. We are certified to wear it. But if that armor is going to be effective for us, if it's going to be effective, then we need to properly equip it, and we need the proper instruction in how to use it. It does us no good to say that I have the breastplate of righteousness or the shoes of the gospel if I'm not going to wear them. Just like it would do me no good for me to go out and get a concealed carry permit, go down to my local gun store and purchase a firearm to carry, buy all the ammo and all the magazines that go with that specific firearm, and then lock them in a safe and leave them at home. It does no good. Why did I go get a concealed carry permit? What's the point of having a gun if it's not available for use in the event that something tragic and terrible might happen? I'm not saying that all guns have to be used for that purpose, but if you're going to go through the training and get the permit, and you have all of the equipment to do the thing that you were trained to do, then equip yourself. You've been given the whole armor of Elohim. Paul says, put on the whole armor of Elohim. That's what we've been talking about for the last several weeks, that there are pieces to this armor. And this armor was built for you because you are his child and you are a soldier of the cross, and that we are not to abide darkness in high places. We are not to abide sin in our own lives. That we have been given the armor for victory. And we should put it on. And so after he gets done describing the pieces of the armor in verse 17 and verse 18, he's giving us some instruction here. He says, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, and watching thereunto with all perseverance and with supplication for all saints. We're a soldier of the cross. Why do we need to pray if we've been given all the armor, right? Because our general, our leader, we have to be in communion with him. Otherwise, we're going to end up fighting each other. We've been given the armor to wear into battle. We've been given the belt of truth. We certainly have the truth. Psalm 119, 142 says, thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is truth. If you have a copy of the notes, then I put all of the verses that I'm going to use outside of Ephesians 6 on the notes. You can look there, or if you'd like, you could look in your scripture. That would be fine too. So we have the truth in that he has given us his law, and his law is truth. His Torah, his instructions, the first 5 books of the Bible, where he instructs his people on how they ought to live, not to be righteous so much as just to have the best possible outcome in their life, the most victory. That belt of truth represents the fact that he has provided us with guidance in the law. And more than that, John 14:6 says, Yahushua said unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. He is our guidance as well. Not only did he give us written instruction within his scriptures, within his word, but he created for us his word and made him flesh and said, this is also the truth. So we not only have instructions, but we have examples. I don't know about you, but whenever I get something and I get instructions with it and I cannot figure out how to work that thing with just the instructions, I like having somebody to show me how to do it. And just recently I purchased something for Tina's machine, and I'm not done hooking it up yet. It had very rudimentary instructions on how to hook it up to her embroidery machine, and I hooked it up and it's still not working. So my next step is to go on YouTube and see if there's some sort of video, a demonstration video on how to hook it up and how to make it work. Because the instructions, though they were, I'm sure, adequate, weren't enough for me. So I needed a demonstration. And we didn't just receive the instructions in the law, in the Torah. We didn't just receive the truth in the Torah. He gave us an example, a demonstration on how that's walked out in his Son. He sent to us the perfect example of 100% obedience and what that looks like. That's a very worthy belt of truth to put on. There's so many people out today that they walk in darkness. That they follow after the traditions of men. They're led astray by their own lusts and desires. And I believe that there's people out there today that have an earnest salvation, that their faith is placed in the Messiah, and they strive to walk in obedience, but in so many ways of their life, they're walking in a lie. Because they've been told a lie. When I was a very young man, I was about 6 years old, my older brother told me that if I plucked a hair out of my nose, which I didn't even have nose hairs at that time, but if I plucked one out of my nose, I would die within seconds. I'd bleed out through my nose. And I believed him. For years and years and years, I was like afraid. Every time, as a kid, I picked my nose or blew my nose, I'd find a hair in it, and I'm just like waiting for the hammer to drop, And for years, I believed him because I was told a lie. And it's funny, it's hilarious that somebody 6 years old would believe something like that. I believed until I was about 12 or 13, and then I figured out I'm definitely not going to die. I pulled enough hairs on purpose and or accident that I'm not going to die, but I figured it out. But aren't we told similar lies by our religious organizations that we grew up in? Aren't we given similar darkness? He doesn't say that my church is truth. He says, my law is truth. He doesn't say my pastor's truth. He says the Messiah is truth. And the problem is that we have been listening to all of the wrong things, and our life is full of lies. And it's up to us to put on the belt of truth so we can walk righteously in the way that we ought to go. So we can walk in obedience to him and be blessed by him in all of the ways that we are. I want to be blessed by him. I want to be blessed by him in all the ways that I am. I want to be blessed by him. I want to be prosperous financially. I want to be blessed by him mentally and spiritually. I want my family to be blessed by him. And that can be achieved by putting on the belt of truth and walking after his truth His righteousness, which is actually the truth. It says thy law isn't, it doesn't say it's a truth, does it? It says thy law is the truth. Messiah didn't say I am a truth. He says I am the truth. So we put on the belt of truth, we put on the breastplate of righteousness. 2 Corinthians 5:21 says, for he hath made him to be sin for us who knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of Elohim in him. Our salvation came with the breastplate of righteousness. When he took your sin, and he's still taking your sin, as he does that, he gives us instructions and helps us to become righteous. It's one thing for the woman to come to him or be brought to him and be accused of adultery, and the Pharisees say you need to judge her and stone her for her adultery, and he says, who among you will give evidence or will testify against her? And none did. And without 3 witnesses, somebody cannot be found guilty under the law. So he looked at her and he said, go and sin no more. He didn't just forgive her of her sin. He commanded her towards righteousness. And he has been made sin for us. He has become the receiver, the recipient of all of the sin that I have done and all the sin that I will do. And in exchange, he looks at me and he says to me, go and sin no more. I've been given a breastplate of righteousness. I should become the righteousness of Elohim. He's given us the shoes of the gospel. I love the shoes of the gospel because it correlates with 2 other places in the Bible. I gave one of them, Isaiah 52:7. In Romans, Paul quotes Isaiah 52:7. It says, how beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him that bringeth good tidings. In Romans it says the gospel or the good news that publisheth peace, that bringeth good tidings of good, that publisheth salvation, that saith unto Zion, thy Elohim reigneth. He says, blessed are the feet that bring the gospel. And he says that he's given us the shoes of the gospel. The wonderful thing about the shoes of the gospel is the expectation is for us to go, to move. He doesn't give you shoes so you can stand. The gospel it should motivate us. It should drive us to move. Have you ever, when you were a kid, or you ever have grandkids, when they got new shoes, they put them on and they were like, see, I can run faster. And they would take off running because they got their new shoes? I would have the faith of a child. We've been given a new set of shoes. We should take off running with them. He's given us the shield of faith. And the shield of faith is the faith, of course, in the Messiah, faith in Yahweh. And in 2 different places, whether it's King Solomon or King David, they wrote these things. In Proverbs 18:10, it says, the name of Yahweh is a strong tower. The righteous runneth into it and is safe. Our faith in Elohim, our faith in Yahweh, places us in his strong tower. The psalmist said, Yahweh is my rock and my fortress, my deliverer, my El, my strength, in whom I will trust, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. He's given you a shield of faith. And if you place your faith in him, then you don't have to worry about tomorrow because you know that you are within his tower. You know that his name is attributed to you. People, they ask me, they say, why is it important that we say, Yahweh or Yahuwah or Jehovah or whatever? Why is it important we say his name rather than just God or Lord? Well, it says in Proverbs 18:10, the name of Yahweh is a strong tower. His name. We have to be sure who we have faith in. We can say, I have faith in God. There's lots of gods. They put in God we trust on the money. You think that's the same God that was the God of Israel? I mean, it might be for you, but it may not be for the guys who printed that money. There's lots of gods, but there is only one. There's only one Yahweh. There's only one Jehovah. There's only one Creator. There's only one El Shaddai. The name of Yahweh is a strong tower. We need to make sure that our faith is in Him. And if you place your faith in Him, He is your shield. And it says that not only is He your shield, He says, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. He's given you Himself as a fortress, as a shield, as a buckler. He's given you Himself as a defense against the wicked. Put on the whole armor. Pick up that shield. You have it. Grab it. We have the helmet of salvation. 1 Corinthians 11:3 says, but I would have you know that the head of every man is Messiah, and the head of the woman is a man, and the head of Messiah is Elohim. He has become our saving head. We place Him over us, and we place ourselves under Him, and we have His salvation. He's the sword. He's given us the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of Elohim. Hebrews 4:12 says, for the word of Elohim is quick and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing even unto the dividing asunder of soul and spirit and of the joints and marrow, and is a discerner of the thoughts and intents of the heart. He's given you that sword. There's so many people that have that sword, right? They have it. There's so many people that believe that have it, and yet they lay it down somewhere, and they leave it on a coffee table, or they leave it on a shelf. And here's a wonderful thing. You can carry it with you everywhere you go on your phone. There's no greater access to the Scriptures than right now today, and yet so many people ignore it. But I'm going to tell you that if you can wield it, it will pierce even into the heart of the people you speak to. It will be the most effective tool that you have for sharing the gospel. But we don't use it. We don't familiarize ourselves with it. There's so many people out there, they'll go out and talk to you about how you can be saved. There's so many people out there that if they do witness, they do it by telling you their experience. This is who I am. Why don't you come to my church? That's their version of witness. Come to my church. When they've been given a sword, but they don't know how to use it, so they drag you somewhere else. You've been given a sword. Ezekiel 36:27 says, and I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you shall keep my judgments and to do them. See, we've been given a sword, and we've been given a spirit that will cause us to use that sword. That's what He's given us. He's equipped us. He has given you everything that you need to have to put on the whole armor. So, you have it. It's time to equip it. And prayer is how we equip the armor. Because prayer humbles us. It says in verse 18, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, and watching thereunto with all perseverance and supplication for all saints. Prayer is how we equip that armor. It humbles us. A lot of people, they think that prayer is like a magic thing where you can wish for a bunch of stuff and you give it to Yahweh and He has to give it to you. And they learn real quick that that's not how it works. And they become disillusioned. And they think that either prayer is pointless, or they think their whole relationship with the Father and Creator is pointless. There is a large movement within mainstream Christianity to have people believe that they can just name it and claim it. That if they would just pray for it and believe, then God will just give it to them. He'll just, give you whatever you pray for. Pray for a Lamborghini, you'll get a Lamborghini. Pray for a bigger house, you'll get that. But that is not the Elohim of Israel. The Elohim of Israel, He doesn't owe you anything. You know that? He doesn't owe you anything. He doesn't owe you a car. He doesn't owe you a job. He doesn't owe you a family. He doesn't owe you peace. He doesn't owe you anything. And He doesn't have to give you anything. He's the perfect Father. The perfect Father. And a perfect Father, when his child comes to him and says, I want something, The child may or may not receive it based on their obedience. A perfect father does not give a disobedient son the wishes of his heart, because those wishes are probably leading that son away from that father. He's a perfect father. He's not a genie in a lamp. We don't get a limited or unlimited set of wishes. We can't just obligate him to us. He only chooses to hear the prayers of those who are in obedience. Psalm 66:18 says, "If I regard iniquity in my heart, Yahweh will not hear me." If I decide that I am okay with my sin, that's what regard means, that you've recognized that, hey, there's sin there, but then you said to yourself, but it really doesn't matter, I'm okay with it. Then it says Yahweh will not hear your prayers. He doesn't have to hear you. He doesn't have to listen to what you want. If you are going to be a spoiled child and live in disobedience to your perfect heavenly Father, then there will come a time when he will say, I will not give you what you want, because what you want is not good for you anyway. If you've ever had children or been to Walmart at all, you've probably seen children. But if you've ever had children that when you were going through Walmart and they wanted something and they threw a fit and you gave it to them, then the next time they wanted something, what did they do? They throw a fit. But a good parent goes through Walmart when their child throws a fit, then that child is disciplined for throwing a fit and not given the thing they want. And the reason is because a disobedient child should not get the things that they want. And we understand that as principle. I mean, you may spoil your children every once in a while. I'm not saying that that's necessarily 100% wrong, but I'm saying that you understand that there's a principle that if you give a spoiled child whatever he wants, he stays spoiled. And the Father, he says through the psalmist here in Psalm 66:18 that if someone regards or accepts the sin in their life, then he'll stop hearing their prayers. He also says that he only listens to those that listen to him. Proverbs 28:9, he that turneth his ear from hearing my law or my instructions, even his prayer shall be an abomination. He hates the prayers of the unfaithful and the disobedient make him sick. That's what the word abomination means. It means it makes him sick to his stomach, like he's going to throw up. Prayer is how we equip the armor, and prayer should humble us. It's not a list of demands. You cannot hold anything hostage and expect the Father to give you the desires of your heart. The proper position for prayer is humility. 2 Chronicles 7:14 says, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. You know, there's causality. This is cause and effect here. He's saying, if you meet these requirements, then I will do this. Now, I don't know about you, but I want to hear from heaven. I want healing. I want to be blessed. And I can't just name it and claim it. What I'm going to have to do is humble myself and pray and seek his face and repent and turn from my wicked ways. And if I can meet those requirements that he gives me, it's then that he hears my prayer. It's then that he answers my prayer. It's then that I receive the blessing. I want to be equipped with the armor because I know that in this life I need victory. But that victory doesn't come because you need it. And that victory doesn't come because you want it. That victory comes because you have chosen as a believer to walk in obedience to the Father. And then you will hear from heaven, and then he will hear your land, and then you will be blessed. Then you will be equipped. James 4:6 says, but he giveth more grace, wherefore he saith, Elohim resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble. Your prayers have to be flavored with humility. They can't be flavored with your sin and your disobedience. They can't be flavored with your choices and who you want to be. They have to be flavored with you saying, I am becoming nothing and you are becoming everything. That what I want is now what you want. I'm not following my heart anymore. I'm going to follow yours. And then you've struck the perfect pose to use that armor that he's given you. See, prayer, he tells us, he says, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, and watching thereunto with all perseverance and supplication for all saints. He's saying prayer is so important. He's listing it with the armor, and he's doing that because he understands that prayer is powerful. That you can have all of that armor, but it is useless to you without prayer, without consulting with the general, without consulting with the master. Prayer is powerful. In humbling us, it empowers us. So if we look at James 4:6 again, it says that he gives grace unto the humble, and grace is the power of Elohim. It is the very power of Elohim. We think of grace as being this wonderful, forgiving, merciful aspect of the Father, but really it's his power. Because grace is him using somebody that is completely unfit for use to accomplish what he wants to accomplish. Grace is having Samson pull down the pillars on the Philistines. Samson wasn't worthy of that calling. He wasn't worthy of being used by the Father, but the Father poured grace out on Samson. Even though he was disobedient and arrogant and proud, Samson got to a place of humility, and then all of a sudden grace was poured out in Samson, and he judged Israel righteously with his last act, destroying more Philistines in one act of grace and humility than he ever achieved in his life of strength and pride. Noah found grace in the eyes of Yahweh. And that sounds like, oh, well, Noah must have been a pretty great guy and the Father forgave him of the little things he did wrong. No, what he did is he demonstrated the power of Yahweh and survived a flood that killed every other single person on earth. That's power. Grace is the power of Elohim on this earth. And if you want that power, if you want to be able to wield that armor the way that it was designed to be wielded, then you are going to need prayer. And not just prayer, but proper prayer. Prayer of humility. Prayer of an understanding that the things that you're taking to the Father, they're not new to him. You know, there's no doubt in my mind that Elohim knows about Hannah's wreck and knows about our need for a car for her. No doubt in my mind that our Father knows about Lydia's back, knew about her back before we did, knew that it was in the shape that it was in before the doctors called us. No doubt. And when I carry these petitions to the Father, I'm not bringing him a wish list of things that I want him to fix for me. I'm acknowledging that I cannot fix these things on my own. It's easy to pray for Lydia's back because I'm not a doctor and I'm not a surgeon and there's nothing I can do to fix it. You know what's not easy to pray for? Making sure I make it to work on time tomorrow. Because I think I can do that on my own. Right? It's not easy to pray for making sure supper turns out okay. Because I think that I can cook pretty good on my own. But the truth is that everything that you do, he expects you to depend on him. And the more you reach out to him in prayer, even for the things that you think you can do on your own, the more you acknowledge his might and your weakness, and the more humble you are and the more powerful you'll become. Because I used to think that I could quit cursing like a sailor on my own. And I couldn't. I thought I could. And it wasn't until I went to him in prayer and said, hey, I got to stop this. I can't talk. My kids are little. I don't want them growing up talking like this. And it wasn't until I humbled myself and said, I'm not capable of controlling the way that I talk. James was right. James says that if a man can control the things that his tongue says, then he's a perfect man in everything he says. And I couldn't control it on my own. See, we're all struggling with something today. And here's a lie that Satan has convinced you. You can take care of it on your own. You're strong enough, you're smart enough, you're good enough to do it on your own. But you're not. And prayer is a reminder that you're not. Prayer is a reminder that the things that you're struggling with, even the things that you think you can handle, you can't. Prayer is an acknowledgement of His providential care for you. That the very next breath that you breathe, you don't breathe it on your own. It's a gift. That when you wake up in the morning, you didn't do that on your own. It's a gift. And prayer is an acknowledgement of the gift of life that He has given you and the ability that He's given you to accomplish the things that you're doing. Because without His ability, without His interaction in your life, you are poor indeed. So prayer is the pose of humility, because it acknowledges that even though I think that I'm pretty good at raising my kids, I couldn't do it without them. And even though I think that I'm a pretty good husband, I'm really not without Him. And so if I can pray and ask Him to help me with tonight's meal, then when I give thanks for it after it's done cooking and we're about to eat it, can't I be a lot more sincere in my gratitude? I can. So, prayer is powerful. It humbles us and gives us access to His grace, His power. 2 Corinthians 12:9, and He said unto me, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Messiah may rest upon me. Listen, it's when we know that we're weak that we're made strong. This is kind of an important passage. If you actually read the context of that verse right there, you're going to find out that Paul was struggling with something. He was losing a fight. He called it a thorn in his flesh, and he asked the Father to take it. And the Father chose not to. The Father chose to leave him weak, because it was in his weakness that the Father was able to demonstrate His strength. And He says, at the next verse after this one, He says, but I've decided that thy grace is sufficient. And it is. See, if we can't humble ourselves, He's going to put something in our lives to humble us, and He won't take it away, because He needs to keep us humble in order to put on that armor, in order to accomplish the things that He wants you to accomplish. He wants you to have victory. He wants each and every one of you to have victory in your life. That's why He's given you the armor. And we have to humble ourselves. We have to bring ourselves low so we can put that armor on and be powerful. Psalm 73:26, my flesh and my heart faileth, but Elohim is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. The psalmist is saying, I can't do it. I'm failing. I can't do it. I can't tolerate it. But it's a good thing He's my strength. Do you ever feel like just everything is failing in your life? Rejoice. He's preparing you to accomplish good things. He's preparing you for His strength to be demonstrated. James 5:16 says, confess your faults one to another and pray for one another, that ye may be healed. The effectual fervent prayers of a righteous man availeth much. James is telling the churches, he says, listen, you need to take and go to one another and confess where you're wrong. He's telling them, hey, you need to humble yourselves to each other. Because, once again, we have cause and effect. He's saying if you can go and humble yourself and confess your faults and bring yourself into a right relationship with one another through humility, then your prayers become powerful and effective. Do you want your prayers to be powerful and effective? I do. Because I'm going to tell you something. I want to see people saved. And I've got the helmet of salvation and the shoes of the gospel and the sword of the word, right? But I can't do it. I can't win that victory without humility, without effective, powerful prayers. Because prayer is the missing link. It's one thing to have armor, it's another thing to be able to wear it and fight effectively. And Paul is saying here, listen, you have the armor. Here it is. Here's a list. Here's all the wonderful things that it represents in your life of faith. Here it is. Now it's time to pray. The most effective thing in the arsenal of the armor that we have is not the sword, it's not the helmet, it's the prayer life that comes along with that armor, that equips that armor, makes it effective in your life. The prayer life that brings you into a place of humility, not just with the Father, but with each other. The prayer life that brings you into a place of humility in your marriage, or as a parent, or as a child, or as a brother or sister. We're all ready to go and fight, wickedness in high places, right? I mean, that sounds like something that, like big time we can do that. But you can't fight that wickedness in high places if you think you're in high places too. If you think of yourself a little bit more than you ought to. It's time for us not just to equip ourselves with the armor, but to strike the proper pose in which that armor can become effective. A pose of humility, a pose of prayer. Having armor is not enough. Ephesians 6:13 says, "Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of Elohim." He says, you can't just have the armor, you've got to have it with you. You have to take it. It's not just, sure, yeah, there's armor out there and it's got your name on it, but if you don't go grab it and claim it, then you're not going to be able to use it. And then secondly, he says in Ephesians 6:11, put on the whole armor. It's not enough that you have it, you got to wear it. You got to wear it. See, I have a computer that I carry with me. It's a laptop. It's in my office right now, and it's Apple MacBook Pro. It's got a good battery life, by the way. And here's the wonderful thing about my computer. I can go anywhere and still work from the job that I have because I have this computer. And so if like something's going on here at the church, I may not be able to partake in that activity, but I can be here and at least experience some of the joy while continuing to work. It's nice. I did it over Sukkot. It gave me a lot of freedom, a lot of opportunity. Here's the deal though. I have the computer, but if I don't take it with me when I go somewhere and I'm supposed to be working, then I'm not going to get work done. I'll probably end up getting fired. Because I don't have the tool that I need. I have a computer, but I don't take it with me, then I've got a problem. We're supposed to take it unto us, that armor. And there's a battle to be fought, and just because you own armor doesn't make you a soldier. You have to have it with you. And I have this computer, and I do. Now I'm really good about remembering to bring it with me because I like my job. But if I don't charge that computer, if I don't charge it, before I leave the house, there ain't much way to charge it in the car. It doesn't do me any good. Having it with me is not enough. I have to prepare and put it on. I have to put it on the charger. I have to get it charged up so that way when I'm out, I can use it. And I'm going to tell you something. When you're out in this world, you need not just to have the armor, you need to have it on and you need to be able to use it. There's preparation involved. Just because you are saved doesn't mean that you're an effective soldier. So the question is what do you do daily to prepare for spiritual warfare? Do you spend time praying? Do you spend time in the Word? I can ask some people, what do you do daily? And regardless of what their answer, their actions tell me that what they do daily is they just hide from spiritual warfare. They just I'd rather not argue with somebody about the truth. And I'm going to tell you, hiding is not an option. The Father did not save you so you could watch other people fight. He saved you because He needed a soldier of the cross. He saved you. Now, maybe you're not, the greatest soldier alive. You're not Rambo or anything, and that's fine. But He gave you armor. He fitted it for you. It's for your benefit. He expects you to do something with it. What's your prayer life like? We need to spend our days equipping ourselves. Spend our mornings equipping ourselves. Before we face this wicked and evil world, we need to equip ourselves. Because if you don't, here's the thing, you don't even have to walk out your door anymore. All you have to do is turn on your computer and the world comes flooding in. Are you protected? Are you guarding yourself? Are you wearing armor? Because if you're not, you're going to be overrun. Let's all stand.